stop watching HR trends.
I love that.
Like these bright, shiny objects, these progressive practices, like keep drawing our eye off the ball. Like get the foundation and the fundamentals right.
I love that.
Pay people well, figure out how many people you need doing what, do the workforce planning. Don't reinvent the wheel. Yeah, I would like to see
I think what you're describing is like, think from first principles, don't look at these kind of second and third order fad kind of leadership and management advice trends. Just kind of go back to the core. Like, keep it simple, plain English, simple goals, just a few big rocks, these kind of tried and true kind of practices. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have Andrew Bartlow on the program. He has extensive experience in human capital management, private equity. He's been an educator, mentor, accelerator lead, and the list goes on. Andrew, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, would love to get an intro from you for the audience.
Well, you listed a lot of things. I have been busy. My career started as an HR guy inside enterprise companies like Pepsi and General Electric, and I had my first taste of the startup world during the dot-com boom and bust. I was the head of HR for a company that went global and then went bust.
Wow. What company was that?
Well, it doesn't exist anymore. It was known as Dynamis Solutions back in the day. Yeah.
Didn't have .com in the name, but
a lot of our customers were .coms. One of the claims to fame of that short-lived company, we got to about 120 people, was that we installed Wi-Fi in Ford Motor Company headquarters in 1999.
Wow.
Wi-Fi wasn't a thing back then.
Early to market, yeah.
Very early, yeah. But before our time. Our time. Yeah, so I've been an HR guy for decades, and then pulled my parachute maybe 6 years ago with the latest merger, that the company that I was the chief HR officer for. It's now an S&P 500 level company known as Invitation Homes, tech-enabled real estate company. Pulled the parachute when headquarters moved, wrote a book, hung my single shingle as a consultant. I've been advising and small ticket angel investing, caught on with a private equity firm as a operating partner and advisor throughout their portfolio. And I lead a accelerator program for HR leaders of venture-backed founder-led tech companies. I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff. I'm teaching some classes. I'm trying to found a SaaS company. I mean, arguably, it's all interrelated. It's all about making people and companies more successful, but it's a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and such a cool background and journey. Let's start with the book. When did you write that book? Why did you write it? What's it called?
Yeah, it is strategically located behind me over my right shoulder here.
Oh, there it is.
Scaling for Success. That was published by Columbia University Business School, where it finally hit print in the summer of 2021, right during COVID. So we didn't have the global book tour that you imagine, but it's really about management practices for growing companies. What works, what doesn't, and it was written really for a handful of reasons. One was as a response to all the really weird and awkward people and management practices that I observed in the Silicon Valley. I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've seen lots of startups start as high flyers and then magnificent crashes. I saw all sorts of weird stuff, and I thought it would be useful to outline what actually works and how to approach these situations.
Isn't it all just founder mode now? You just go founder mode and do whatever you want?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the excuse to do whatever you want. Yeah. Now I'm kind of playing at being a founder myself, having started 3 companies over the past 6 years. None of them have any meaningful mass, but boy, it's different. It's really different. Now I'm eating my own dog food after advising founders and CEOs for a long time. Now I'm actually doing it, and it's a little different. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know how hard it is. That's why I don't do it. I just invest in people who do it. Shout out to all the Team Ignite founders. So what are some, things that, founders and managers, leaders get right when they're scaling for success? And what are some of the pitfalls and traps that they get wrong?
Yeah. Well, what do you get right? You won't get funding unless you get something right. Somebody's made a bet on you, and beyond friends and family, you're clearing out your mom's 401k for your pre-seed round. You got funded.
Sorry, Mom.
Hey, I mean that's a learning I've had as a founder of like your ego, your personal net worth, your friendships, your family are all wrapped up in your business. Like it
Yeah.
is your identity, and I don't think you can fully grasp that until you live it.
Mm.
And so that's something where I don't know whether that's
Yeah.
right or wrong, but it is, and
No, I
appreciating that
definitely
is
feel that
helpful.
way as a founder of Team Ignite. Like
Yeah.
it's definitely become just what I think about almost all the time.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
family and then that.
That's right.
And video games, I guess too. But
Well, we'll trade some
video games.
stories.
Okay, I love
Yeah,
that. Yeah, let's
potentially.
do that.
Yeah. So what do founders get wrong? I created these two tongue-in-cheek archetypes of the prophet and the mule driver. These founder archetypes. And the prophet is, and these are extremes, of course.
Yeah.
The prophet is somebody,
stereotypes.
for sure.
Yeah.
Is somebody that is charismatic, that can sell, that can get funding, that can make investors believe, that can attract a great team, that is totally visionary, but can't execute their way out of a paper bag. Can't actually make a tough decision or hold somebody accountable or do something hard executionally. That's the classic prophet. I've worked with and for and around quite a few of those.
I've had, especially in Silicon Valley, you find them in that Series A and B. Maybe they're the founding, maybe they're kind of the first professional CEO. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that.
SoftBank tends to love profits.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the mule driver. And with a mule driver, it's somebody that sits in the front of the cart and whips the mules to point them in the direction, and they make all the decisions. And the team around them is not considered particularly smart or hardworking. They need to be motivated with carrots and sticks. And the mule driver can be a micromanager, classic type of approach. And I think that's kind of the founder mode concept that people are talking about so much. Like if things aren't going well, just dive in. Seagull management might be similar, swooping and pooping.
Swooping and pooping, I like that. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, so the prophet and the mule driver were two archetypes that I thought would be funny, but are also very real.
Yeah.
And I think the moral of that story is don't be either one of those. Try to recognize your own natural tendencies, but also pick the path that works for you and your company and the stage that you're at.
Well, I think another way of phrasing that is like sometimes you have a good leader, but he's not a good manager, he or she. And sometimes the inverse is true. Great manager, but doesn't have that leadership kind of presence. And then sometimes you get both, right? Like you get the Steve Jobs kind of archetype, right? Got down into the weeds and drove a lot of, high output, as Andy Grove would say,
right?
Management, but also like a visionary. Elon Musk might fall into that category as well. Visionary, but also like down in the weeds, driving the mules.
Yep.
But sometimes, I think what you're saying is if you have one or the other, probably, and you strongly oriented to one of those two, but not both archetypes, you can have a lot of blind spots and be ineffective.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the reasons why groups like Y Combinator, only want to fund founding teams. Solo co-founders are pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
and a big red flag
partner. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't even find one person to go 50-50 with you on this, or you don't want to go 50-50. I haven't had that many startups fail, but most that have end up with a solo founder, right? And maybe they started with two and one left or something, but that solo founder journey is really, really tough.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actively looking for a technical co-founder, and I'm not going to pursue a seed round until I find that person. Like why
it'll be really hard to get funded. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Not only would it be hard, but like what would somebody be investing in if it were, half the equation?
What else from your book kind of stands out in terms of lessons? Anything else you want to highlight?
Yeah, that's funny. That was one of the most common questions that we got when we released the book. Yeah, it's 210 pages. But what does it say in one soundbite? Can you just boil it down for us? One of the other big takeaways is have a plan and keep it simple. So let me expand on that a little bit. In the startup world, it historically has been so chaotic that there has been a resistance to share a plan. But you had to share a plan to get funded, to attract a team. But then there becomes this fear of potentially missing targets if you share what that plan is, or things are moving so fast that I'm not really sure where we'll be. But that's the point of having a plan, is to get your team directionally aligned, whether it's 2 people or 200. Is just to like map out what are we going to try to do here. And that's why you keep it simple, because it can change quite a bit. The earlier stage you are, the faster things are moving, the more it could change. So don't go get the 90-page McKinsey deck for $1.5 million. Save your investors' money on that,
right?
And do something on one page and say, what we're going to focus on this quarter is this part of the product roadmap. Period. Have a plan. Keep it simple. That's core. Another, I think, overarching concept is be brilliant at the basics rather than distracted by all these bright, shiny objects of popular management practices. I was around during the holacracy craze where Tony Hsieh was talking about self-managed teams at Zappos, and my CEO rolled in on a Monday and said, we're going to implement holacracy. I used a lot of political capital and relationship capital with him to talk him out of it. Didn't make sense. I could expand on why, but bottom line, it didn't make sense. And there's so many management fads that come and go. And I think, founder mode is the latest one that people are talking about. And, I think there's the return to office and remote work and hybrid that is still, it's still kind of buzzing around out there with leader preferences. But whatever the flavor of the day is, just keep it simple. Focus on the basics. You want to have a team that knows what they're trying to accomplish. Don't get distracted by sending people succulents and getting kombucha on tap, or reinventing performance management at your place. Just be boring. You're already reinventing the product or service that got you funding, that drove your startup. You don't need to reinvent the way that companies run.
Yeah. I mean, it's been so let's talk about some of those tools and techniques. Out of GE, you have the OGST, right? And out of Silicon Valley, you have the OKRs. And what are some timeless kind of tools that always seem to work over the decades? And what are some fads that have come and gone that you're like, that would have never worked?
Oh, well, you named one that gives me an opportunity to do one of my favorite rants on OKRs. OKRs got popularized by Andy Grove, who wrote High Output Management. You already referenced it. What people don't realize, who are trying to implement OKRs in their early stage startup, they don't realize that Andy Grove first popularized this. I don't think he was the first one to ever use it, but he popularized it in the 90s, which was manufacturing silicon chips. And it was already tens of thousands of employees. Fairly mature business, had a lot of growth left. And he only implemented OKRs for his direct reports, not for the entire organization. It's not the same way that everybody has implemented it today. And it was again, fairly mature business with things that you could count. How many chips were you stamping out? What was the quality of those? What's our sales? It's a bad fit to have OKRs in a high change, high pace, pre-product market fit, knowledge worker, team-based organization where stuff is changing all the time. If you are applying OKRs the way that they tend to be applied in Silicon Valley or at venture-backed startups, they tend to be recommended by the old VCs that made their money in some way off of the Intel value chain. And that's why they're VCs now, because they got some money. And they're doing their best to recommend practices that they thought worked, but they're misapplying it. It's like if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Oh, OKRs are great, but it's being misapplied. So the way I see OKRs being applied in the Valley and in startups is every single person gets a handful of objectives and key results and a stretch target, and it's set on a quarterly basis. And that's done so that the leadership team can understand what people are working on and how are they doing. And the problem is that is a massive bureaucratic and administrative exercise that's usually done very poorly, that's massively distracting from actually doing the work. And by the time you do it, the quarter's already at an end and you need to start over again. So it's just really badly misapplied. And the basics, what I would recommend as an alternative, is to set clear company level goals. It is shocking and dismaying how many companies are applying individual quarterly OKRs, but have not clearly outlined what they're trying to do as an organization. or it's fake. It's like fake goals.
Couldn't you do your OKRs at the company level, and have 3 to 5 of them, and then they just kind of cascade down?
It's the cascading where things get complicated.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
That's when stuff breaks.
Yeah.
So like let's talk about some real goals rather than fake goals. Or actually, let me talk about fake goals first because that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
The fake goals are where you do kind of a bottoms-up build of what are all the things that our teams think they want to work on, and then we're going to come up with the biggest, fuzziest buckets that we possibly can to fit everything into those.
So that's like bottoms-up OKR planning.
That's right. And that's fake. Yeah, that's not actual prioritization. That's just that's
you got all the worker bees down here running around doing stuff, and you're going to try to categorize it, basically. Yeah.
Which usually ends up being, increase revenue, reduce cost, ship product, be a great place to work. If I'm an HR guy by trade, if be a great place to work is in your company level top 4, it's a fake goal. I just don't believe it. It's just something that you threw in there to sound good and to try to capture.
Pay lip service.
Yeah. So
I'm laughing because I think that was a Microsoft OKR at one point.
Yeah, and it was
funny.
Probably a throwaway. Yeah. What you can do to actually help your team make choices is think about it more like an express train versus local trains. Local trains have stops all along the way. I used to ride the BART out here in the Bay, and there was one that would just shoot from Walnut Creek into the ferry building downtown area. And there are others that would stop along the way, and it would take them twice as long.
Right.
If you have a company priority that's truly a priority, you don't want it to have any stops along the way. You don't want that priority to have to negotiate for resources and time and attention. You don't want tiebreakers to have to break a tie as to do we work on this or that or choose whatever. So that being really clear about what's most important right now, and I guess I'm using some Patrick Lencioni 5 dysfunctions of a team language there.
Oh, nice. Yep.
Is super helpful for an organization. Like lots of stuff needs to get done. You need to sell some stuff. You got to pay payroll. You got to answer
build
customer inquiries. Yeah. Those things don't belong on your priority list. That's all below the waterline of your iceberg of things that need to happen. The most important thing might be this product launch that you're trying to do on a certain timetable. It might be reaching profitability, whether that's cost-cutting driven or new customer driven. It might be geographic expansion where you're opening a new market in Europe. If you're trying to do 3 or 4 of those things at the same time, like even companies like GE and Pepsi don't do that well. If you're a startup with 100 people or less and you're trying to do 3 or 4 of those big things, like fail, big F. So pick the thing and make it clear that this is where, if in doubt, work on that. That's real goal setting and prioritization.
That's fascinating, and I think we'll circle back to that because there's lots of good questions and conversation there. But I'd love to move on to Series B consulting and the People Leader Accelerator. Kind of what motivated you to start that, and what's that origin story?
Sure. Yeah, I founded Series B Consulting back in 2018. That was my single shingle consulting business. I have a website. It's ugly. It's on Wix. Built it myself, so it's particularly ugly. And that's like the umbrella organization for all the various things that I do, from coaching, mentoring, advising, investing. I do a little bit of executive search, do some projects here and there, org effectiveness, org design. That's Series B. I guess I'm outlining my legal corporate structure by doing this.
Yeah, there you go.
It's my solely owned S Corp.
Yep.
People Leader Accelerator is the executive development program for HR leaders at investor-backed, founder-led tech companies. It's really built on the back of the book. So we've been talking about some of the concepts from the book. Everybody was asking, hey, what's the takeaway? What's the Cliff Notes version? What's the soundbite? And myself and my co-author of the book, who's now the dean of the MBA program at HEC Paris, arguably the top MBA program in Europe, London School of Economics might argue with that.
INSEAD, or might be another one.
A few, but we'll see.
In the top 5, let's call it.
Yeah. I have a screenshot of number 1 from them somewhere, but we'll see. It's probably very niche. My co-author of the book and I came together and said, hey, how do we actually help people? Like, this book is out there. but who's going to sit down and read the 210 pages and apply it? Like, how could we be more useful? And so we started this exec ed program, almost like a book club on steroids. And like dig into it and use the templates, and let's talk about how to apply it on the job in your organization. And so now we've been running that for almost 5 years. We have into our 8th cohort. It's a selective program. I turn away more people than we accept every time we do it. Maximum of 15 people in each cohort. And it's been amazing. It's been super fulfilling as HR leaders can better understand how they can influence organizations and their management practices to make them more effective. Instead of just doing all the stuff, instead of rolling out the classic HR playbook, like actually use critical thinking to figure out what your org needs right now and what'll fit. Like, is it design thinking? Maybe. If you like the whole IDEO design thinking thing, maybe.
Right.
But there are some tried and true and battle tested practices that you don't need to reinvent as well.
Yeah.
So that's where People Leader Accelerator came from. And we have it positioned as very proudly intentionally intensive, rigorous to the level of an executive MBA program. And just really proud of that. It's probably the most fun thing I do.
Very cool. So what are the cliff notes again?
Thanks. We'll come back to that.
Love that. So you've done now 9 cohorts of this. How is your thinking about running this changed over 9 iterations?
Yeah. Well, we're in the midst of our 8th right now. We're selecting for the 9th. We launched it during COVID, and I almost didn't launch it. The original idea was that we would meet in San Francisco in person and have intensive half-day or one-day sessions in person with these HR leaders. And the idea of doing it remotely on video, like we're speaking on video right now, was just foreign to me. I
Brady bunching it. I call that Brady bunching it, where we got the 3x3 or the 4x4.
Well, and that's
aces floating in space. Yeah,
that's one of the reasons that we capped our cohort at 15. Like, if you can't be on one Zoom screen in the Brady Bunch boxes, if it extended past that, we felt like that would drop some of the connection. That we want to drive. So the whole idea was, this is going to be the best. This is going to significantly change and up-level the education and support that HR people in this space have. And if it isn't going to be the best, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to have my name on it. And so I almost didn't launch it because we couldn't do it in person during the height of COVID. And then we did launch it. We said, well, let's give it a go, and we'll put everything we have into it. And like, what are all the ways that we can connect with people and make sure that it's high touch and very personalized? And we're going to have large group. We're never going to record anything. There will be no videos that they watch. It's all going to be live. We'll have multiple homework assignments. We're going to have small group sessions. We're going to have like all these different touch points. And that actually made it really good. Like, it's arguably better than an in-person experience now. And
really,
it's extended the reach where we've had people from Europe and Mexico and all sorts of Canadians. We even had one crazy person from Australia join us at like the wee hours her time. So it's attracted a global audience as a result of being able to be remote.
So I'm curious. It sounded like you were skeptical about the remoteness of the program given COVID. Were you also skeptical of remote work before COVID, and have you changed your mind running this Accelerator remote?
Was I skeptical before? Yes. Have I changed my mind about my skepticism? No, but it's more nuanced. So, I came, I'm turning 49 in a few days. I, started my career in the mid 90s, and there was a FaceTime culture at many of the large organizations where I worked at, and some of the startups as well. Like, you wanted to show that you were putting your all into it.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. I mean, it was a thing.
Silicon Valley 10 years ago, for sure. Yeah,
for sure.
We're 20. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was skeptical about the effectiveness of people that were remote, and then I lived it. And then I, for the past 6 years, I've been working out of this home office. This chair has seen a lot of me.
Yeah, I'm in this office constantly. It's like where I live.
Yeah, really. I spend more time in this like 8x8 room or 10x10 than anywhere else in the house.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm still somewhat skeptical that at scale it makes a lot of sense or is the best thing. But what I'd say is that there's got to be some nuance to it. Yeah. If you're a true believer of in-office or remote or hybrid, I think it's worth just checking your assumptions and trying to understand the limitations and boundary conditions. This is a business decision that should be based off of math and rational assumptions rather than belief. So if you're a retail or industrial establishment, you're going to have workers that need to like make a thing or sell a thing or fold the clothes or cash checks. You can't be remote for that. And so should middle management be remote? Well, probably not. They probably need to be around their workers. But could you have certain jobs like an AP/AR clerk or a software engineer at a bank or a clothing company work remotely? Yeah, sure. Right. Sure, why not? I published something on LinkedIn that got a lot of views. It's usually the grouchiest stuff that I put out there, the most opinionated stuff that gets the most clicks. It's kind of sad, frankly.
No.
The opinion that got so many views was that hybrid work is the worst of both worlds. Worst of both worlds from the employer's perspective. But I see more and more companies like split the baby and go to hybrid work. And I could unpack that. I'll try to do it quickly for you.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah. Yeah. In office, there's this presumption that there's higher levels of productivity. Team shows up and works and has less downtime and it's more collaborative and more innovative. Like there's all the kind of accidental collisions that drive the work if you're there together. Cool. Got it. Remote work, fully distributed, not hybrid, you lose out on that. You lose out on all the bumping into each other. Everything has to be scheduled. The relationships don't necessarily get built as strongly or as quickly as they would otherwise. But you're not paying for commercial office space. You do receive the opportunity to have labor arbitrage, where if before you were meeting in Palo Alto, and hiring people in a commutable distance from there, now you can hire somebody in Chicago for 20 or 30% more, or Tennessee or Texas or wherever. Vastly expands your labor pool because you're able to have a dispersed workforce, and it potentially lowers the cost, so lower time to fill, all the good stuff. If you have to be in the office 1, 2, 3 days a week, you don't get the advantages of cutting commercial office space. You still have to have the space for people. You don't get the advantage of labor arbitrage because you're still hiring in the local area. You don't get the better time to fill with a larger talent pool, and you're missing out on half of the opportunity, assuming that you're in the office half the time and out the other half. You're missing out on all those creative collisions. So I think it's the worst of both worlds.
Very interesting.
It's this really awkward splitting of the baby that I think is leadership just trying not to make a decision.
Yeah, or they're trying to satisfy, they're trying to cater to employee needs and kind of not doing a good job. So your point is like either embrace it fully or say, hey, we're back in the office, pretty much full time, 4 days a week at least,
Make a call. And it might be different job to job and company to company. So I'm not a true believer.
At the manager discretion.
Yeah.
That's a big part of why I moved out of Silicon Valley during COVID, because I was already working remote. I was on my third company working from my bedroom on the peninsula where the rents and property values are the highest. And I was like, what am I doing? Why even live here anymore? But I actually think in hindsight, being in Silicon Valley helped me get some pretty awesome jobs, because they're like, oh, he's on the ground in Silicon Valley. And I was actually flying back and forth to Seattle for Amazon and Microsoft successively. And I probably got those jobs in hindsight because I was there on the ground in Silicon Valley. But
yeah, it's starting to matter again more and more. Yeah.
Do we, I wonder, I'm putting you on the spot here on stats, but do we know of any really successful, say, unicorn billion dollar companies that are remote first?
GitHub was one of the early, or is it GitLab was GitHub is part of that. They were one of the very early proponents of it. A client of mine, and I don't know if they're officially a unicorn, I think they are, Teleport. They do engineering infrastructure work, software engineering infrastructure. Yeah. They've been remote first from day one.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to, if somebody's listening out there, send us some stats on that and we'll cover it in a future show. But I'd love to know, the data science nerd in me is like, okay, well, just show me the data in the last since COVID, right? Like what was the success rate of both approaches? And, COVID was a great experiment where it's just like all the companies founded then, like how did they do versus before? And now we have some probably good, multivariate kind of looks at the data over the last 5 years to kind of say which approach is more effective in certain kinds of companies.
I've actually, well, all right. So hopefully I'm not, dashing anyone's hopes here. So my co-author of the book and partner with the Accelerator program is an academic. He's a PhD academic in management science, and I asked him the same questions, like what works? What works better?
Yeah.
Like we must have some studies on this. And he said, yeah, plenty of studies on both sides. It just depends who funded the research and what the authors of the and you can find 5 compelling studies on either side of that fence.
Yeah, I love that.
So based on that, in my mind, it's still inconclusive.
This reminds me about venture capital and kind of, investing in startups. And people will say, "What's your thesis?" And I'll tell them, and they're like, "I don't get it." I'm like, "Don't worry, there's no wrong way to do venture capital, but there's plenty of wrong ways." And just like running a company, there's no exact way to do it. But there's plenty of wrong ways to do it. And it just depends. It depends. Right. Like I have a portfolio company called Team Out. Shout out to Team Out, who'll be on the podcast soon. But their whole business model is to do like these on-sites for remote and hybrid companies. So they want to get everybody together. And how do you do that efficiently at scale, figuring it all out? And where do you go? And how do you book everything? And blah, blah, blah. So they've created a marketplace and it's very successful so far. And I definitely think, there's just a lot more people that I know personally that are like, great, I'm not going to go back in the office. I'll take a pay cut and I'll just work for somebody that will allow me to work remote. And some people are like, you know what? I do want to be where the action is. I want to be in a city center and I do want to go in 5 days a week and see people. So everybody's different. It's just like every company is different, right? So Team Ignite will never have offices. I work from my home office. No matter how big my team gets, it will be remote forever. But we'll definitely do like on-sites and, so.
Well, the big takeaway, and I love that you used the language, it depends. Like that's one of the most, commonly referenced phrases that we use in People Leader Accelerator. But we believe that it's our responsibility for people that are part of the program to help them understand, what does it depend on? Like what are the variables? What are the boundary conditions and limitations? Like be able to work through it. But the point is, there isn't just a playbook that you can roll out for all, Series A SaaS companies. It's going to work. Like you actually should put some thought into it.
So real quick, because we'll have to get wrapping up soon. I know you have a hard stop. I'd love to pick your brain about your SaaS startup and what it is, and maybe you could give the commercial to any technical co-founders listening out there to the podcast.
Ooh,
You talked a little bit when we were getting to know each other about the respect that you have now for founders, given you're going through it yourself, and what have you had to adjust? And it's a little different, I think, when you're advising like Series B and beyond kind of HR leaders to like being a founder going 0 to 1. It's a way different thing. But tell us about your startup.
Yeah. Well, boy, thanks for the softball, and technical co-founders, please. Yeah, please look me up. I'm on all the places. I'm on the YC co-founder matching. I was just on some sort of founderbase.com thing, and
your best technical co-founder like is going to be somebody you have work history with. If you hope to get into YC, which you should definitely try to. We have a YC focused fund. We invest in lots of YC companies. What we've noticed about the teams is 1, they're A-level teams. Like they're just, all the teams there are just A+. But 2, they almost always have work history or life history together. Almost always. So it's kind of like, we worked together. We started a software company together in high school. Like really cool stories like that. And I think they kind of index on that because they've seen probably in their data over time, like that's what leads to success and sticking together when times get tough. Because that's like probably the number one killer of startups is one founder leaves.
That's fair. I believe it. I wish I had my technical co-founder in my phone right now. Maybe I do. Maybe I should spin back through it. Yeah. So I'm an HR guy by trade. 30 years now, from enterprise companies to mid-cap and private equity backed, and true startups, and I've multiplied that over the past handful of years with all. I've done a bunch of angel invest. Well, I've done some. I think I have like 6 angel investments, and I'm an LP in 3 different funds.
We're going to change that. We're going to change both of those numbers.
All right.
Don't worry.
Look me up. All right. And just like exponentially increased. I'm doing, you might know People Tech Partners. I've been part of their diligence team for a long time. I dropped off last year, but I see it. I see the HR tech in the space.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of the HR tech that's available to us, number one, it's massive TAM. It's a $2 trillion TAM, small and mid-sized businesses in the US, their payroll. If you can impact that payroll, there's massive dollars in productivity to be found. And most of the HR tech out there is nice to do and enabling broken processes like performance reviews and 360s. And we've the big popular tools out there just automate broken systems. They're beautiful software, but it's a broken process. So I'm reimagining performance management, vastly simplifying it. So small and mid-sized businesses don't need OKRs so that they can understand what people are working on and who needs help. You don't need an engagement survey to do that. You don't need a once or twice a year performance review to do that. Sure as heck don't need a 360. Simple process, display data in a common sense way that allows mid and senior level management to go take action. That's the plan. That's the concept. It's called on-track performance. I've spent too much money and too much time with a Ukraine-based dev shop. Very nice people, but they didn't have any experience building this type of thing. So I pulled the plug, and I've been restarting.
It's another red flag too. If I start looking at a startup and I'm like, who's on staff that can actually build stuff?
Yeah.
And ideally, you actually have 3 people. You have like someone like you, who's the business, product, the founder market fit guy, and then you have the technical co-founder. Somebody could build the CTO, VP Veng, whatever you want to call him or her. And then in SaaS software, you kind of need the designer too. You need somebody that can really make. Yeah, it really does. And people are just so allergic now to bad design. We're just so used to good design with all of our consumer experiences out there with all the famous brands, but also enterprise software has gotten pretty well designed. You look at some of the Microsoft stuff, definitely the Google stuff, Apple. You're kind of like, people just kind of go, oh, this is like kind of shitty and I don't want to use it,
Yeah.
So I see that being really important these days.
What I'm finding is it's all important. It's all important, and boy, that's just like such a walk in the shoes of you've got to find the right co-founder, you've got to make the product great, you've got to get in front of the right customers, you got to get funding, you got to do all those things kind of simultaneously with the horse and the cart and the chicken and the egg all somehow landing at the same time. And it's a And I'm probably shortchanging it because I'm a part-time founder. I'm doing these other things, and so I'm sure I'm not even like fully living the high wire act that a lot of other people do.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's switch to a rapid fire real quick so we can get to some burning questions. So you mentioned video games. Let's trade that. Like, what's your go-to video game or favorite video game?
Well, right now I've been sadly addicted to a game on my old iPhone. Called Total War.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's been disappointing.
Those mobile games can really suck you in.
It's been mostly mobile. Although I just finished Baldur's Gate 3 last week, and
that's pretty nerdy.
About my second playthrough. Yeah, super.
It's pretty nerdy.
Yeah, I'm very nerdy.
I've been playing Escape from Tarkov for 5 years. That's been my go-to, and I still play it. And I just got into Satisfactory, which is a PC game, and it's like kind of Minecraft but cooler and with a lot cooler technology. Like you're this human on an alien world and you're trying to save humanity, and you got to like set up all these factories and you have all these like operational processes running, doing all kinds of mining and refinement and product builds. It's really fun. It really scratches my kind of like Civilization kind of itch, the 4X kind of Civ 5 and 6 kind of itch. I could talk about video games for another hour. I won't do that. What is the one HR trend everyone should watch in the coming year or two?
One HR trend. Actually, let me flip that question. Stop it. Stop watching HR trends.
I love that.
Like these bright, shiny objects, these progressive practices, like keep drawing our eye off the ball. Get the foundation and the fundamentals right.
I love that.
Pay people well, figure out how many people you need doing what, do the workforce planning. Don't reinvent the wheel. I would like to see
I think what you're
a lot
describing
less.
is like think from first principles.
Yeah.
Don't look at these kind of second and third order fad kind of leadership and management advice trends. Just kind of go back to the core. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, keep it simple, plain English, simple goals.
Yeah.
Just a few big rocks. These kind of tried and true kind of practices. What's the best book you've read recently?
Well, aside from Scaling for Success,
Nice.
actually, I drew a lot of inspiration and some quotes from Elad Gil's book, The High Growth Handbook. I just thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good one. What's one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
Patience. Be a little bit more patient. I was always trying to do more faster in the job, in the career. I think that led to often unnecessary stress or moves that might be sooner or riskier than they had to be.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar background where I was very motivated by success and ambition. And then I realized I was sort of like not doing what I would do if I was already, won the lottery or something. And so I spent the first 5 years of my career kind of just doing the Wall Street grind thing, and then realizing what am I doing? I don't even like this stuff. I don't like the people I'm with. I don't like this stuff at all. And I just been heads down grinding towards this thing.
Yeah.
And then I was and that was a quarter life crisis for me. That was 20 years ago now, or a little less than that, 16, 17 years ago. And now I do exactly what I'd do if I was a billionaire. I'm already doing it. I'd be doing this podcast. I'd be investing in startups and helping them. So yeah, I love that. What is your favorite part of working with high growth companies?
Being useful. That's my, that's defining the word by using the word. But that's really where I get my self-actualization now, the peak of Maslow's pyramid. I find that high growth companies are chaotic and they need everything. And it tends to be people that are just overwhelmed and often doing what they're doing for the first time. I've been there, done that so many times in so many shapes and sizes and colors and flavors of the thing that I can often pattern match pretty quickly, diagnose pretty quickly and pretty accurately, and help people see around corners. And that makes me feel good to be useful at this stage of my life and career.
Well, awesome. Where can people interested in getting in touch with you find you online?
That's the second softball thing. Thank you. How do you find me? I am on LinkedIn. I'm very noisy on LinkedIn. It's actually me that writes that stuff, and I post at least 3 times a week. Andrew Bartlow. There aren't a whole lot of people with my name out there. And then my main website. Yeah.
There's a lot of Brian Bells, including in Silicon Valley. Yeah.
Series B Consulting might be the longest website name you'll type in today, but seriesbconsulting.com. You can find me there too.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.